Hello, everybody. My name's Ian, and today I'm discussing this Monster Hunter illustration. I also want to talk a little bit about dealing with arthritis while continuing to draw. This piece here is being laid out on 11 by 17 Bristol Strathmore 100-pound smooth surface, the typical page that I usually work on, um, and doing the layout with a 2H pencil. Um, I'm not going to go too much into the pencil portion because you can't really see a whole heck of a lot with the this particular type of pencil. Um, the genesis for this piece is essentially um, I was playing with ideas of monster hunters, and it was an October piece, a Halloween piece, and had done a shoot, another shoot again with my friend Amber here. We've done a few before. I've done a few videos that have had shots from of her as the basis in the past, and I wanted to do another ink illustration in this kind of organic horror style. Um, but I also wanted to talk a little bit about the fact that the pressure glove that I'm wearing, and you can see it here as well with the tools that I'm using in this particular piece, my 2H pencil with a pencil extender, more specifically the crowquill pen that I discussed how to use in a couple of videos ago, and usually this brush um, to use with Black India ink. I typically use a pressure glove to help me deal with my arthritis. It's um, it's something I've been dealing with most prominently in the past 10 years. So approximately 2015, 2016. Prior to that, it had been a thing. It had been noticeable. I've been drawing, I've been drawing almost every day as far as I can remember, back to, the late 70s or something. But professionally, I had been doing art full time since 1997. And that would be a combination of working digitally, so working with a tablet and a stylus, and working with pencil and ink and such. Um, and I did find that over the decades, my hand definitely started to reshape itself a little bit, so that in the past few years, it's gotten a little bit harder to deal with. Now, I don't have really intense arthritis. I don't have to take medication about it. I'm very happy about that, and I want to keep that as much as possible. So for me, the things that really seem to help, um, and this would be good for a lot of artists getting a bit older. There's a time of this shooting. I'm 56. Uh, I find that the things that really help me are giving myself a time limit. I will only draw for about an hour in any given time, and then if I take a half an hour break, I can go back to it and draw for another hour, and everything seems to be just fine. This pressure glove also helps a lot, as long as I'm wearing it only while I'm drawing, and don't forget and leave it on all day, because then it can get a little bit too intense. But keeping those things in mind, that tends to help me the most. I'm honestly, that's probably the best advice I can give, is the setting a timer. Um, Honestly, doing a lot of these illustrations for video means that in my OBS software, I can just see how long it is that I've been working. And once it gets to be about an hour, I was like, okay, that's a good point to stop. Um, Weirdly enough, I also found that using a stylus on a tablet that does not have a screen on it seemed to be causing the biggest issue. And that's actually how I started working digitally back in '97, and for many years. The tablet I used for painting in Photoshop was one where you weren't looking at the tablet itself. It's the type that does not have a screen on it. It operates like a mouse, so that if you're drawing down on your desk, but you're looking up at the screen and up at the drawing. And I found what would happen. There'd be a couple things happening with it. Really, is I'm not watching my hand. I'm not watching um, how I'm kind of crushing my hand into the plastic or metal surface, depending on the tablet I was using, and I would get a very heavy hand. Um, the tablet, um, the nibs on the tablets are generally supposed to last between 6 months and a few years, depending on the type of tablet, on the type of stylus. And I typically burn through them within 2 to 3 months. I'd be replacing nibs on these styluses very, very quickly. Uh, and and eventually that I believe that's what ended up causing some of the bigger arthritis issues. And I recognize that that's what I was doing, and it's actually one of the reasons why it took me so long to want to work with a screen tablet, because I was concerned that I would be putting gouges into the screen, that I would be heavily scratching up the screen. Um, with several of the tablets I've had over the years, I did precisely that. Um, I would completely deface the surface of whether there was a plastic sheet on it, or the last one I got, an all metal body one, and I ended up putting in some fairly serious gouges and wearing those things out. So I was a little bit concerned about trying to use a screen tablet as to if I was going to cause the same kind of issues, and those ended up being a lot more expensive. Um, but I took a chance on picking up a Samsung Galaxy Tab 6 Lite, a relatively inexpensive but still very nice tablet for drawing, specifically to use as a screen tablet. The kind of thing I could just sit on a couch and do some sketching, or sit out on the balcony or wherever and just do some random sketching, and to see if that would start helping with my arthritis. And it did. Just the action of having to see my hand while I was drawing, I wasn't putting as much pressure down anymore. Partially because I'm assuming I would just unconsciously do it because I'm drawing now on a glass surface, but also because I could see how I was drawing, that I wasn't starting to crush, the small fingers of my hand underneath everything else. And that helped enough that my wife ended up buying me a Huion tablet for my main PC, to replace the more traditional style tablet I had. So I have the Huion Canvas 16 2.5K Canvas Pro. And yeah, I discovered I really like it. It works really well for me. Um, and it started relieving a lot of the pressure in my hand. I definitely noticed I was having fewer incidences of having to go a while without drawing. That definitely helped a lot for digital work. Plus, just alternating between that and more pencil and ink work. For a lot of years, I've been getting away from that, and it was a lot of fun to be able to get back into doing more penciling, doing more inking. Um, I'll still never quite have enough control to use a brush as the primary method for inking, but going back first to use a speedball pen, a wider nibbed speedball calligraphy pen, and then coming back here to the crowquill and rediscovering how much I loved it and rediscovering how to use it properly. Um, that also went a great deal to helping with my arthritis. There are still times where I will forget. I will not pay attention enough, and I'll miss something. I'll miss my timer. I didn't set a timer, or I just ended up drawing for a little bit too long. There was one of the pieces I did, one of my Portage and Main robot pieces, that I actually did as two separate videos. The first one just discussing composition, and then the second one was discussing painting from back, my methodology of painting from back to front. When I was doing the composition part, um, unlike this video where I've drawn it over a series of hour-long sessions and now recording a talking headpiece to play over top of it, with that one, I just had two cameras going constantly. So I would discuss it while I was working on the piece. And consequently, I wasn't paying enough attention to the counter. And then I looked up at one point and saw that 3 hours had gone by. And I wondered if that was going to become a problem. And I wasn't able to draw anything for about, well, a little bit less than a week. I had to take a very serious break from it. but it still wasn't as bad as it'd been other times. It was more, well, anytime I pick up a pen, it's giving me a warning sign, so I'll just put it down. Then it's not too much of a problem. But the big thing when you discover that you have arthritis is to make sure it doesn't get any worse. Uh, I can't necessarily always cure it. You can't make it necessarily better, but you can limit how bad it'll get from that point on. So for me, alternating an hour long drawing session followed by half an hour long not drawing, and then going back to it. And I actually can spend most of an afternoon drawing that way. I found I can work on, by the end of the day, at least 5 to 7 hours of drawing, as long as there were long enough gaps in between the individual hour long sessions. Oddly enough, another thing that helps can be playing video games. Using a controller, I guess, is just stretching my hand in different directions and just popping into a different place. That works really well. Spending an hour drawing and then an hour playing Cyberpunk 2077 or Red Dead Redemption 2 or something like that does seem to do wonders. So, um, yeah, I wanted to spend a little bit of time discussing that while also discussing this particular piece. It's very similar to many of the horror pieces I've been doing lately, where I'm having a very rich, really dense, organic background. All the trees back there. There are actually statuary. There's some statuary in the deep background, um, and using a similar level of detail on the coffin and the monster in the foreground. Um, Loosely inspired by what I was doing here with the previous steampunk scientist piece, um, with a couple of other recent coffin-based illustrations like the Pumpkinhead and Vampire piece. Um, it's just always a fun motif to work on during the Halloween season. Um, but then once I get that very dense, heavy background put in, and then in the foreground, there's a lot of density, but there's actually a lot larger spaces of black. There's a lot more flat black to kind of separate those planes on either side of the main character. Um, like with all of my pieces, they tend to be focused around one character or a couple of characters with some story going on with that character. And everything in the illustration is meant to push the viewer's attention towards that character. So in this case, in this particular way, it's there's a few things going on. The level of detail is one thing, is one way that I'm pushing that um, focus towards the main character. The the background of the trees, it's a lot of detail, but it's all the same kind of detail. It's very organic. Not much in the way of leaves, but a lot of leafless trees, but very creepy kind of overgrown. Um, well, there'll be some birch in there, some willows, things like that. A lot of trees you would see here around Winnipeg, right here in southern Manitoba. Um, in the foreground, a very different type of texture because it's this vine overgrown coffin. So we're having multiple textures. There's metal and stone and vine as well. And then a third style of texture on the monster itself, the whatever the creature is, kind of linen wrap or covering over it. The bone on the skull creates a bit of a different kind of a texture, similar to the texture being used on this crazy weapon that she has stabbed it through the heart with, kind of reminiscent of the creepy knife, the weird blade used in the Evil Dead movies, with a skull on the end of it, of course. Um, the way that that's separating from her, from the main character, the Monster Hunter character, is with her skin tones. I'm using very little detail. It's more of an outline on on the figure. On the leather jacket and leather pants that she's wearing, it'll be very solid blacks. I am putting in rim lighting. You can see that there is lighting hitting from one side on the jacket to give it detail. but I'm leaving these large spaces open that'll actually be filled in with a flat black, and that will serve to to make her pop a little bit more. Also, um, and this will get we'll be able to see this a little bit more here, where I'm putting in the hair. I'm creating a line around the figure that doesn't connect to the background behind her. So she's getting this haloing effect, and that's to deliberately separate her from the background. She's moving through this environment, but she's not necessarily part of it. Um, in a different way from, say, the previous Pumpkinhead and Vampire piece I did, where with both of those characters, they were very much part of that environment. They're part of that whole creepy scenario. So, for the most part, the exterior line art of those characters would actually interact with the background. The background of the trees or the tomb or whatever would directly butt up against the line art of those characters. But with her, with this character, there is a little bit of a halo. There's this line around her. It's kind of a bubbling line, um, just to show her moving in space in front of the background, but also that she's here to deal with something here. She's not here to be part of this. Now we're doing very simple details on the face with a lot of empty space, in the same way that technically in the jacket there will be a lot of empty space. That empty space will be black instead of white, but it will be flat, featureless to serve, give it a kind of a graphic quality, to give it a sense of multiple planes, multiple levels of interest going on. Um, Another way to help establish distance from the viewer, the way that the coffin was drawn versus the way that she's drawn versus the way that the deep background is drawn, all serve to create a three-dimensional space that she's inhabiting. Um, and I also frequently like to have the focus of the character, the direction of the face, to be at a 45 or even 90-degree angle from the focus of the body, from the direction of the body. It adds a little bit of tension, it adds a little bit of interest, and it's saying something else is happening. She's dealing with the thing in front of her, but she's also turning to see something else. There's another story, or part of this story is continuing. Um, and you can see here that I'm alternating between outlining things using the crowquill pen and then filling them in with one or more brushes. The nice thing about doing the haloing effect is, while I like creating a rim light inside the body of a character, it also makes it very easy to have this kind of black line, this black line art go, the interior black go directly to the exterior of that figure, because it won't end up blending into the background. There's this halo I created around it. So no matter what I do with it, she'll still end up popping. And so right now, the bulk of her hair is a flat black. It's blending into the bulk of the leather jacket that she's wearing. Um, they do appear separate and distinct from each other because of other things with the line art. The fact that I created these zippers, it creates a different type of pattern than what's on the hair. But they're close enough that they can blend in. But it won't be confusing to the viewer. It doesn't look like her hair's growing out of the jacket. They do look like two separate elements, um, but they're both clearly part of her. They are separate from the environment, and just continuing along with filling in these heavy blacks. This would have been a really good piece because of all the white space on her. This actually would have been a really good piece to think about doing a color pass with. Um, but ultimately, my intent with this was to leave it just as a black and white piece. I like the level of detail in the inks. I like the level of contrast. And when I was done, I was done. I was good. I was quite happy with how this ended up turning out. Um, and actually, the leather jacket idea was one that the model had come up with. This is based on a jacket that she owns, and I really like the particular pattern she came up with. We did quite a few different 80s inspired outfits in this particular shoot. So uh, the Amber's great to work with for stuff like this. Um, but yeah, now that we're getting into working on the arm, we're very close to being completed here. And this piece would have taken approximately 10 hours to pencil and ink in its entirety. I know that because I can see there are 10 chunks of video, each one approximately an hour long. So it does make it rather easy to judge things like that. And that's about average for me for a full ink illustration. And it'll certainly go a lot longer if I'm going to go into full colors. But for a piece like this, like a single figure piece, um, with a fairly tight focus, very few specific elements, as as much detail as there is in the background, it's kind of one thing. It's just this mass of trees and the figure in the coffin. They can't be looked as two separate elements, but still, this is a relatively simple composition, so about 10 hours for the full pencil and ink is about right on time for it. And here we have the finished piece. Um, Thank you very much for hanging out and listening to me talk about this piece and talking about dealing with uh, arthritis as an illustrator. Have yourself a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.